May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be aligned with your love, O God, our strength, our courage, and our freedom. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. So good to see each of you. Happy Father's Day to everyone, including those who have been father figures. It is a wonderful day. And also, I want to take into the purview of this sermon Juneteenth, which we celebrated this past Friday. So there's a lot going on here to kind of reflect on from Jesus' perspective. And the lens through which I'm going to do it has to do with what leapt out at me from the epistle from St. Paul, having to do with our having a new life. And I want to talk about the fact that you and I can have a new life every day. Now, a word about Juneteenth, just in case anybody needs reminding. What happened was the word didn't get to the people in Texas, in Galveston, Texas, about the Emancipation Proclamation that Abraham Lincoln signed until 2 years later. So what we do is on Juneteenth celebrate the fact that everybody has gotten the word that we are called to be emancipated in this country. Everyone is free. I like the summary that I read. Freedom had been declared, but freedom had not been delivered. That's the place we are in Juneteenth. Everybody, we're free. But not all of our siblings in America feel that freedom from poverty or racism or the lack of inclusion or. And our job on Jesus' behalf is to make sure that freedom gets delivered, including or on top of it having been declared. Now, I'm going to come back to Father's Day in a few moments, but let me pause to say why Paul and new life are so important to me and offer themselves as the perspective that we have for looking at the day. Every writer has their own signature theme or themes. I'll talk about my own in a minute. But for Paul, for sure, newness of life is a central theme. He remembers that God, every time God speaks, says something about the fact that God is creating a new heaven and a new earth. And behold, I'm making all things new. And when we are really hearing about the real God, we're hearing that God is making things brand new. I love this first lesson. So we have a situation where Abraham has had children by more than one wife. More than one wife. And that wife is pretty doggone jealous of the fact that he has had a baby by Hagar, and that baby's name is Ishmael, and she wants that woman and that baby banned. God said to Abram, I got this. Go ahead, get some distance, and I'm going to take care of Hagar and Ishmael. Sends Hagar away, and in the words of today's lesson, it says that God was not about to let Ishmael die in the desert. Rather, it was at that moment in the mind of God that God created a new people and a new religion. There in this lesson is born Islam, which tells me God ain't got no favorite religions. We aren't supremacists. We can't get any Christian national supremacy going because God has created Islam and other religions and speaks to us through all of these religions. I love the inclusiveness, the comprehensiveness, the universalism of God's love. Well, let's move on. I want to tell you about this father on Father's Day. So my first week ended in my first sermon, which was about mantras. God saying that Jesus' mantra is to be merciful, desire mercy, not sacrifice. And I talked about how I had translated that mantra into my own mantra, which is to care for the beloved inside me and inside of everybody else. Just to ground you in that, it'll add 30 seconds. This third stained glass window is my favorite in this beautiful collage of windows because it has this strong beam of light coming down on then Saul, who was transformed into Paul. And it was that beloved beam of light that also appeared at Jesus' baptism. And it is that beloved light that is in absolutely every one of us. That is this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And we are called to care for the light that's inside of us and to care for the light that is absolutely in everyone else. So I translate the mantra of I desire mercy and not sacrifice into a mantra of care for the beloved light inside me and care for the beloved inside everybody else. Well, that was too long an introduction to say that after that sermon, at 5:30 the next morning, I caught a flight to Atlanta and was there for a conference, and then wonderful conference. Then came back here, preached my second sermon. Today is my third sermon. The next day, I flew to Atlanta again for the burial of a dear friend of mine, who may be arguably one of the best fathers I've ever known. Let me tell you a story about him. His name was Tom Morphus. He had 3 kids. When the firstborn was an adolescent, he fell in love with graffiti art. And he found the best graffiti artist in all of Atlanta. And he kind of worshiped him because he was the king of graffiti art. And he wanted to be like him. And so he started a life of going around Atlanta putting unwelcome graffiti art on buildings. His dad saw it and intervened. Now, this is a sermon about new life, doing something new. God created a new religion with Ishmael and Hagar. Now God is doing something new through this father. This father, Tom Morphus, took his son Chris when he was an adolescent and did something I thought is brand new. He took him to meet the king of graffiti in Atlanta. And he said, "Here, son, I want you to know this man. And then I want this man to tell you what kind of trouble you can get in with the law if you go around making unwelcome graffiti all over Atlanta." Then he takes him back to the house, and he takes him to the backyard, and he says, "Okay, son, here's the entire back of our house. Here's some graffiti, cans of paint. Go to town." I thought that was just amazing to intervene with the discipline of your son, an adolescent son, and give him permission to put graffiti all over your own residence. Well, you may not be excited about that, but I'm thrilled. My son and his son are here on the front row, and I'm thinking about how can I be creative in my being a father and a grandfather to these 2 folks on the front row. Now, I hope you're hearing me tie this in to the new life that Paul says is ours. What he's saying is, when you allow your sufferings and your deaths to be in the life of Christ and his sufferings and his death, then, my friends, you are guaranteed the new life that Jesus has. Your sufferings and your death are part of his sufferings and death, and his new life is a part of your life. You and I are called to live new lives every day. I was surprised. I'm a social media fan. I do not get down on social media. I've got an active Facebook page, Instagram, and everything else because I keep up with my friends that way. These two guys I married 11 years ago on Juneteenth in Pasadena, California, posted their wedding pictures and a part of my homily that I preached at their wedding. This was 11 years ago on Juneteenth. One was 37, one was 39. And I made the point that of anybody who was in the congregation in Pasadena, California that day, older than 37 or 39, they could not have imagined that in that church we would be marrying gay people. I said, but what happens is if you let God's love into your life, you will be provided a new life. Now, this past week, I heard a podcast of one of my favorite public intellectuals, David Brooks. David, I read everything he wrote when he was an opinion editorial writer for the New York Times. Now he's left that and is a staff writer for the Atlantic Monthly. David is in his 50s, approaching 60. And somewhere along his journey, he became Christian. However, David says, I didn't leave the Jewish faith. I'm a Jewish Christian or a Christian-y Jew. And then he says, he was asked in the podcast, what happened to you when you entered a life of faith? Without thinking, he said, the center of my gravity moved from my head to my heart. Those of you who've been on a journey with Jesus and have known that God is love, is merciful, is your home, is your new life, you have made the journey of moving your center of gravity from your head to your heart. I say that because I moved the center of my gravity from my head to my heart when I realized that the point of Christianity is not to focus on people's sin, but to focus on the love inside them. And the purpose of Christianity is to focus not on my sin, not being a wretch or a worm or having no help in me, but to have love over fear in my heart. That's what I'm trying to do everywhere I work as a priest. Say to every faith community, come on. The most important thing you can say about people is not that they're sinful. The most important thing you can say about people is that they are love. And that is their true self. To discover the love inside them. So, in this homily, in this wedding of these two men, I said, Don't you see what has happened here, folks? Love is stronger than fear. We are not afraid of these two men having fallen in love with one another, and now this church is going to bless that in this wedding. Love over fear is God's answer to every problem we have. Being a country of tribalistic, polarized, weaponized camps, to the temptation to go into war, any kind of established racism, bigotry, or discrimination where people are hungry, starving, falsely imprisoned. The new life of love over fear is the answer to all of our problems. So, my friends, I come today with great joy to tell you that you and I have been ushered into the new life, not the old stagnant life of division, but the new life of unity, embedded in nature and embedded in relationship with one another. And when we know that God is creating all things new through love, this church will be a beacon of love and healing to everyone in New Orleans. Amen? Amen. Amen.